Welcome to Rolling Into Your DMs, the show about the more subjective side of running Dungeons & Dragons and other tabletop RPGs. We are your dungeon masters, a lifelong dungeoneer with more experience points than the rest of us put together, Chris.
All in pursuit of making those dumb-lich dreams come true.
A World Wide Web wizard who owns at least one mysterious orb and has a beard to match, Brian.
Yeah, sometimes the orb gets lost in the beard.
With an 18 in charisma, a 15 in intelligence, and straight 8s across the rest of the board, Kyle.
That is alarmingly accurate.
And I am Steve, a Pictomancer with a suspiciously large number of luck points. And I will make a note from here that we're absolutely inclusive. And, trans rights. And gay rights and all that.
Black Lives Matter.
Just all those things.
Just launching right into that, right off the fucking bat. Oh, also probably gonna swear. Are we gonna swear?
We should probably note that. At least I want to keep it to a minimum, but it's gonna happen. We're gonna swear.
Steve. A minimum of
Have
swearing
you met me?
for me. Yeah, a minimum of swearing for me is 4 to 5 times a minute. It's kind of a...
I will not use the C word.
Yeah, that's...
I can give you
The
that.
C word will be used, apparently. Okay.
I will not use
That's
it.
where we'll...
Kyle, all we have to do is edit out your swearing and edit in or something,
I guess, yeah, but,
Or come up with a clever swear, like raven-haired dandy boy.
That's way too long.
Or something.
They just fucking come out. I can't...
I'd always switch to the Battlestar Galactica frack instead of fuck.
There's not a lot of... I just don't have a lot of control over it, is what I'm saying. Okay, anyway... So, for the listeners, what is this podcast about?
We basically discuss topics that aren't really discussed in the Dungeons & Dragons guide for being a DM in general.
I'm sure we'll roll into... roll into... That was not intentional, believe it or not. We'll roll into other games here and there, too. We're not going pure D&D, necessarily, anyway. That's my biggest area of focus.
5e's pretty popular, so I figure since there's so much traction on it and so many people are talking about it, there's so many shows, it's definitely everything that a kid's doing right now, and even their parents, their kids, their friends, their older adult friends and whatnot. It's a very inclusive game, and I mean, it's obviously going to be talked about a lot, but there are other tabletop role-playing games that we could also discuss that we may even come across. So I know that I come from a background specifically of playing with GURPS, because that's how I started out as tabletop role-playing. Officially, I guess, using an official tabletop role-playing system.
And for anybody that doesn't know, GURPS is Generic Universal Roleplay System.
Yes, and it's a good one.
Cool, I didn't know what that was.
It's very fluid. No, that's the wrong thing to use. It's modular. Very modular. It's kind of like if you want to build a rogue, here are some things that you can pick to make a rogue specific to you, rather than rogues can do this. Well, you can make a person that has these sets of skills to make a rogue.
Do you want to build a rogue here? Sorry.
Yes, I always really like
right.
it. So right off the bat, let's real quick just launch into a little bit of our backgrounds in the game so people will have a reason to listen to our opinions. And from there, we can launch right into this week's topic. All right, and now we will roll for initiative to see who gets to introduce themselves first. Everybody, let's do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got an 8.
I got a 17.
I got a 13.
Believe it or not, I got a nat 20.
Woo!
Good. I didn't want to go first.
I guess you win.
Set the bar! Set the bar, Brian!
Okay, well, my background in Dungeons & Dragons really started with... I became friends with Kyle, and he had been having I don't know if it was weekly or what, he was in a D&D campaign, and we were hanging out, and it just happened to be on the same day of that D&D campaign, and that was really my first exposure of watching D&D. And then, I was very interested at first, first seeing it, but then I didn't actually start playing for a little while after that. And then I played in a number of different campaigns, some with Kyle, some without. And then I've fairly recently started running campaigns. I just started a new one for this past week, but I've run sessions for family members, for other friends and stuff, and it's one of my absolute favorite things in the world. I think it's the best game in the universe.
All right.
I was after you, right? Because I had the 13, I think.
No, I had a 17, motherfucker.
Next up was Chris.
So, when I was a child, my dad didn't have enough time playing D&D with his friends, so he made his family play Dungeons & Dragons with him, and the rest is history.
That's dope as fuck.
Yeah.
Right. So, I started playing campaigns with my friends in high school, and we all took turns DMing. And I play with my family at home, and my dad would DM campaigns, and he's my biggest inspiration. And he's seriously the best dungeon master I've ever seen in my entire life. But yeah, so high school, started DMing some stuff. Eventually, I wrote this really arduous campaign, and I have been making people play it ever since. No one has finished it yet. Someday, though, my dreams will be realized. I've also hosted like one-off campaigns with people, or just started campaigns out of thin air, which is a good time.
Yeah, it is a good time. Those are the best ones, and also the memorable, and also the worst ones, depending on who you talk to.
Sometimes it's all of that.
Yes, it is.
And sometimes they're the middleist campaigns.
They're the middle child of all the campaigns.
Yes.
Right, I guess that would be me. So, my exposure to D&D, or really just tabletop role-playing, is, I wouldn't say complicated, because in high school, we had a jury-rigged system of, I guess, tabletop role-playing at the time. I think it involved using, like, rock, paper, scissors to get across, and there were stats and stuff like that. Like, it was sort of involved, but it was very half-assed. I remember it clearly, but it worked out for a little bit. And then after we graduated, I haven't really had much exposure to it until later in college. I was at student activities, and there was just a group of people playing GURPS. So that's how I got into tabletop role-playing officially. I was just casually listening to their fucking campaign, and I ended up joining them as, if I remember correctly, a sentient oven named Emerald with a giant butcher knife. We were all watching Full Metal Alchemist, and I wanted something similar to Alphonse, okay? That was my thought process.
And you landed on an appliance.
Okay, I mean, I think it's kind of funny that it came back around that in Brian's campaign, Ryan's character is named Keurig, and he's an orc, but that's neither here nor there.
It's in his defense, as he stated, it's a good orc name. It's a real good orc name.
I think since then I've touched on playing 3.5 and Pathfinder. I have played AD&D briefly. I have also played 4th edition and enjoyed it. So, I mean, don't at me, but I guess you can at me. And then 5th edition is a delight, and that's where I am. So I would say collectively maybe like 3 years of playing, and maybe collectively a year or two of running a game and failing mostly.
You're not failing. I am in your game, sir. It is a good game.
I mean, I definitely failed those couple of tries.
Well, okay, yeah, that first one was kind of a real shit show by the end, wasn't it? But that was just that first one, and that was a while ago. It's fine. Anyway, I am Kyle, and I played a little bit when I was a kid with a friend of my parents, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is. But not much. Like, I think 1 or 2... quick little games. My parents weren't interested. My mom's friends' kids were not interested, so they kind of sideways used me to play the game a little bit. But it, like I said, even then, not much. And then I was involved in that group that Steve mentioned in the high school. We went to high school together playing that weird thing that our friend made, and that was fun as hell. My first real, concentrated experience with playing tabletop RPGs and D&D was in college, and that was, would have been 2004, 2005-ish. And I have been playing or running games pretty much ever since. I started running them maybe, I don't know, 2008, I want to say, around then. And like Brian, D&D is my absolute favorite frickin' thing in the world. I never have more fun than playing or running D&D. It's just a blast. I've played pretty much every version of it, at least a little bit. I've played I've played GURPS. I played and ran. Was it GURPS that I ran that Star Trek game in, Brian?
Yes, it was.
Okay, good. Yeah, ran a Star Trek game in that. It's just so great. But you all know that. You're here listening to us four fucking idiots babble about D&D, so we know you like it. We know you love it. Don't gotta convince you. So let's get into this. I'm very excited about this topic. It's gonna be fun, I think.
So, again, Chris, what was that topic that we all agreed upon?
What came first, the players or the campaign?
I mean, like, from a philosophical perspective, or...
The egg. It was the egg.
Yes.
No, I mean, like, wait, are the players the egg? Or is the campaign the egg? Who's the egg in that
Exactly.
scenario?
Exactly.
Are we all the egg?
Hive mind.
So elaborate.
So what came first, the campaign or the players? Have you built your campaign around a particular set of players, or have you built a campaign and had to find players? And what do you prefer doing?
Do we want to use our original roles?
Stick with the same initiative. I'm fine with that.
All right, just so that keeps it organized. I think that's Brian.
Sure. I've done both. The session that I ran for family members, I was basically just kind of running right out of a module. So that campaign came first, and then they had never played before. So I had to help them roll characters and kind of go over the rules with them and stuff.
Aww.
But in that regard, running from a module was a little bit more restrictive, I think. But it was definitely a case of the campaign came first. More recently, the campaign that I just started running, I didn't really nail down any plot points. What I did was I came up with a general idea of a world and then had the players roll characters. And after they gave me a little bit of the backstory that they were thinking of, that's when I started nailing down more plot ideas for the campaign. So that was definitely a situation where the players came first because I wanted to be able to incorporate parts of their backstory and what they were wanting to do into the general narrative. And like I said, I just started this campaign, so I can't say whether or not it's been successful, but it's been a lot more fun on my side. I think that that's the way that when I'm running campaigns in the future, that's kind of the way that I'm gonna go. Just purely from a more collaborative standpoint, it feels a lot more collaborative in combining all of the different character backstories and what they want to do into the overall story of the world.
Excellent. Next up was Chris.
So, my initial experience DMing was taking turns with my friends in high school, and so we began with modular campaigns. So it was kind of both, in a sense, where we were players and we all wanted to play D&D, but then we kind of didn't have a campaign, so we just bought one. Or I guess that's the players and then the campaign. I don't know. But I've also had it where, I wrote campaigns or I started outlining campaigns and then found people to play with, most specifically in my most recent endeavor. But I've also had instances where I have a group of friends and we're hanging out and we all roll characters, or maybe I didn't have time to get ready and I'm suddenly DMing something where just off the cuff making up a campaign based around what the players want to do, which is, as Brian said, really fun. And if the amount of fun isn't the way you're grading whether or not your campaign is successful or your D&D campaign or D&D session is successful, then I don't know what fucking metric you're using.
Damn straight. Next up is Steve.
Me. So the first couple tries, really, starting with a high school one, I was only a little bit involved in that one. In terms of the mapping and whatnot, I guess it was just more to see if it could be done. if science can make it so that way we can have our own D&D without buying the books. So that was more for ourselves, the players, but for something a little more serious, straight from the actual source material. For GURPS, the campaign for that one definitely came first before the players. And I am willing to admit that was probably interesting, but it could have been better in a lot of ways, because I think having that balance of your players' input on how their characters are and how they could function, rather than here's the setting, here's everything, now make a character based on the surrounding setting. Well, I don't know, like less fun, I guess. I mean, it was sort of fun in that beginning part, except for when it kind of shit the bed there. The one that the player's playing in right now, in my campaign, I did kind of want to see what each of you wanted to bring to the table in terms of building a party for this particular campaign that I'm making. Especially with me trying to have my cake and eat it too, because mine is, I guess, a special case, because you're playing two characters. One of them that you made with me with the campaign in mind, and the other one that you had to make on the fly, which is the child that you're playing said character as.
Yes, that was quite an amazing curveball. Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. We'll put a pin in that. We gotta talk about that, because that was wild.
For that, I think that was more focused on the players itself. I want everyone to have a turn to feel good and to at least have challenges unique to them and kind of be more story focused on them from a narrative perspective, because I like it when they're able to affect things. And I have bullet points that you can either miss or they change as you make different decisions, because D&D is just an ever-flowing thing that just kind of changes as it keeps going, you know? Chaos theory and all that. So that was definitely more player focused. I had the theme, but that was less of me having the campaign first. It definitely was you guys coming first. So that's me on how I would approach that. For me, it was more of a learning process.
All right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does indeed. All right. And finally, I have done it both ways. I greatly preferred making a campaign for players instead of the other way around. The biggest reason for that, though, is most of my campaigns, especially back in the day, were just kind of free-for-alls. I ran games with 10, 12 people in it, because I was just like, whoever the hell wants to play, come on! Yeah, let's just do it! Let's just see what happens! How bad could it be, right? So, like, I didn't pay any fucking attention to who was playing or anything. We just went insane. And shockingly enough, it worked pretty well for a pretty long time. We managed to keep that shit rolling, I want to say almost a year, with, like, this just chaotic mass of idiots, myself included, who just were flailing at this game, hoping against hope that we could get it to continue to function with people dropping in and dropping out, and that was just fun, but it was sheer and unadulterated chaos. It was nightmarish, and I don't think I will ever do that again. Ever since, the way that I've done it is I try to keep it low. The most players I'll have anymore is 6, because, like, it's not that we weren't having fun, it's that we weren't able to have very personalized fun, right? Because I could not keep track of that many characters. So there wasn't really much of a story other than the macro, like the larger story that I was telling, but it didn't really do much to include the players. And that was just kind of, as much fun as it really was sheer chaos. I had NPCs get introduced that just never came back, just because I just couldn't keep track of it all. There was just too much going on. So ever since, I've tried to stick way more to, like I said, like 6-ish. And lately, it's been a lot more of either people approach me to do a game, and then we start it, and then it doesn't continue. Because apparently, I guess they didn't like it very much, or I'm just dying for D&D and no one's running one. So I'm like, well, fine, I guess I'll run one then. And then I seek people out. So when I did that, when it was desperate for a game time, I would and did get a module and just ran the starter set, the Minds of Phandelver starter set, which is freaking great, by the way. Then, like, segued off into doing Princes of the Apocalypse, but our game stalled right when we were about to switch over. Largely due to the situation. The little worldwide kerfuffle that we have here.
If you're listening to this in the future, we're in the middle of the apocalypse right now.
If there is a future.
Yeah, if you're listening to this in the future, thank God, because I'm a little worried about that. But but that is neither here nor there. The point is, right now, this is currently July of 2020, and there is a global pandemic. So
You all have heard tales of 2020. We know this.
that did kind of kill the one game. But I have been working on another concept for a game that I want to do, where my idea this time around is to go about it basically the exact opposite way from the usual and from what Brian suggests and everything, which is I'm trying to build a world. I'm not exactly sure how to describe what I'm trying to do because I want to keep it personal to people, but I just reached out to a lot of people, and I regret this now, to an extent anyway, but I reached out to like a lot of people. I just put up a big post on the social media just like, hey, everybody who has desperately wanted to try to play D&D, and everybody who hasn't but thought, maybe, and everybody who always thought, this sucks, let's do it now. Because we're all stuck at home. We all have the internet, otherwise we wouldn't be reading this on Facebook. We got time. And if you love it, you get to keep playing. And if you don't love it, you can blame it on cabin fever and pretend that you never did that nerdy shit to begin with, right? So I have created like a whole world that I'm doing. And then the idea here is to try to get as many people as I can into smaller groups. The sessions will be run by myself or some of my other DM friends in this like persistent world that I'm trying to create. And that way people can drop in and drop out, just kind of trying to make like a structured D&D space in which we can just have various adventures without being too committed. And I figured that eventually that would winnow itself down to a group of people who would want to play regularly, and then I would take the reins, and it would end up being a more traditional campaign from there. I still want to do this. I'm excited about it. I've done a lot of work on it, but also I have massive anxiety issues, and the world is ending. So I haven't been able to get my head there yet. I can't wait to see how the experiment works out, though. As a rule, I really do prefer to build things around players. So far as I'm concerned, it's never quite the same. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing at all wrong with just, like, buying a module and being like, hey, anybody want to play D&D because I'm bored and I love D&D and let's go to town. Like, nothing in the world is wrong with that at all. It's a great time, very fun for everybody if they're into it. It's good stuff. If you want to take it beyond a game and into that level of creative storytelling that it can get to, I feel you really do need to go put the players first and make that the priority. Like Brian was saying, I'm interested to see if I can balance that, like balance out the idea of a mega campaign with trying to keep things personal, because I think it can be done. I just don't know if I can do it. I have trouble keeping shit straight.
Right.
So what do y'all think? Now that we've gone over the individual directions and opinions, like, what do you think? What's the chat on this?
Okay, I guess I'll go while it gets going. For the larger campaign idea, I'm willing to experiment with something like that. What you're talking about is something more in line of, I guess, a concentrated effort to make Adventure League, but with people that we know. Or somewhere between an Adventure League and an MMORPG. In a sense.
Yeah.
Because that's what it sounds like. Because it's like dropping in and out, having an overall story, but having sections or air quotes areas of a particular place that are really, or servers really, that are dominated by specific, I guess, DM czars at your leisure, to which you could also be a part of the action by making your own PC.
Yeah,
in that sense,
that's basically what I was thinking. But anyway, I don't mean just like opinions on my thing. I mean like on the whole. Like, let us discuss. Okay, here we go. Here's some ultimate shenanigans that Steve pulled. This whole concept, what we were talking about earlier. So Steve's game, he was very clear that he wanted it to be very focused on our characters, right? So we actually, at least I did, I think we all did, but we all actually worked rather closely with Steve in developing our characters. We were very back and forth about the entire thing, you know, talking about everything. My character, Dexter Stibbins, probably my favorite name I've given a character, but I worked with him very hard on Dexter. And a couple of the other players, we all worked very carefully together to get this thing in order, right? He built the world very much around us. He asked us a lot of good questions. We really discussed it all at length, and it was clearly going to be like a very traditional fantasy world. We knew that it was going to be a little bit like 80s-ish in like tone. Lots of synth music and like that kind of shit, right? But it was really just like a tonal thing, you know, and there was going to be bright colors like Lisa Frank, 90s, that era, like the gap between the 80s and 90s, that era of style and tone, right? So we get there and we're all prepared for this wonderful campaign to begin. We've got our traditional D&D sheets with us and everything, these characters that have been very carefully crafted. And then when we got there, Steve passes out to us all these note cards and says, do not turn these note cards over until I say. So we are all a little interested. I remembered that he had mentioned something about tarot cards, so I assumed that he had just done something with those cards that we would then be flipping over and experiencing, right? So he says, okay, now turn over the cards, and we do. And what's on each of the cards is a gender-neutral teenager name so that we could come up with as much about the character as we could ourselves, and then some extremely low, normal, commoner-like stats that, like, a child would have. And then he hit a button, and a fucking New Order album started. And he said, the year is 1985, Kenora, Canada. And so what ended up happening here is he built the inner world of the campaign. Is I refer to it as the Never-Ending Breakfast Club, because it's effectively the never-ending story and the Breakfast Club kind of rammed together. We are a bunch of teenagers in like a middle school or high school in the 80s who found a book, and when we read that book, we play the D&D campaign. But events do happen out in the real world as well, right? So he built the inner story of the campaign, like the actual magical, mystical, wicked cool, we're in the Feywild story around those characters, but then the outside world, as far as I know, had it all pretty well in hand from the start. And then, so right at the beginning of this thing, not only are we launching into this campaign that is designed very carefully around the characters that we have, but we are tasked with instantaneously creating an 80s teen that would have a reason to be in detention. And it was probably the most fun I've ever had, and it's also like the exact opposite of building a campaign for the player. While he did both. He just fucking did both simultaneously in this utterly wild, I don't know what to call it other than a shenanigan. It was a DM shenanigans. It was just this total fucking flipping the script. Nobody expected it. It was dope as hell. I fucking loved it.
Those are the best kinds of D&D moments, you know, the things that you'll be talking about for years. You know, it's the things that everybody who plays wants to have, those kinds of moments.
Oh yeah, no, I'll never shut up about it.
Those moments are the reason why we still play.
Absolutely.
We'll make a point here that... So, Amber has been hearing me for, like, years having the idea of making this campaign.
Amber being your girlfriend.
Yeah, Amber being my significant other, my girlfriend, of 7 years now. So, I mean, she hasn't grown tired of me yet. I guess it's pretty much for sure at this point. It was a Kickstarter campaign that I backed originally. It was a collective group of LGBTQ artists, and they wanted to make a compendium that just kind of goes along with 5e. And like, I was looking through the artwork is really stellar, and just like, I was kind of reading through what they had, and it was actually one of the first Kickstarters that I actually backed. I got that Kickstarter first when it eventually came in the mail. It was first a PDF, then I got the physical copy of the book. It's called Fairy Fire. I believe. And it's all set in the Feywild, and then there's characters, stats, new subclasses, and just descriptions of the world, different enemy types and whatnot. It is really interesting to read through, to look at, and then for a while I'm like, okay, no, I can make something out of this. And the other thing that happened, funnily enough, with that is that at that same, when I got that book, at the end of the year, there was another Kickstarter campaign for Vaporwave tarot cards. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I like the aesthetic anyway.
Fuck yeah.
So there's that. But I got those. I'm like, okay, I have to do something with these now. I made 16 different children with varying different gender-neutral names. And I believe there was also a specific stat that was kind of expressed for the class that they were good in. Everything was for aesthetic, so that way I didn't have to think about it too much of building the campaign. But the campaign itself is made up of me figuring out how to make the story work in this setting. So I think it's a good idea to just sort of make the idea and the aesthetic and have the characters fill the campaign rather than the other way around. I guess for Christina, who came from like both sides of that coin, you can give it and take it, I guess.
What do you mean?
I mean that you have ran stuff from a box from the starter set kit, and you have also written your own stuff to have players interact with. So like you kind of have the most experience to do both.
Yeah, you were saying earlier that you wrote a campaign extensively that you've had several different groups of players run.
Yes, and for each group, I think even with modular campaigns, depending, I've formatted different things to work in their favor. Like, I'm not going to make a campaign that has, like, a bunch of traps and locks and shit if no one is playing a rogue.
Right.
Or if I have added those things in, you know, you take them out or you modify it or...
Yes.
do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. Or, you know, like in this run, one of my players, she did a big backstory. She's a Dwarven princess, but she didn't tell any of the other people in the party that she's a Dwarven princess until recently, and she was, like, kicked out of her homeland because she tried to start a coup to take the throne from her brother and stuff, and, like, she went ham on it. So now I have this campaign that I've made. But then I have these players who, like, I've insisted, especially since it's their first time playing for a lot of them, like, they really, like, flesh out a backstory. And because it's their first time playing, I did not expect that much backstory. So now I'm like, how do I just, like, nudge this in a little bit? How can we get more into, like, these things that they've decided? And how can I make their dreams come true? While navigating, like, this outline of things that are definitely going to happen in this world.
Right.
And then also with creating a campaign first, there's the more, like, linear sense of how do I make these people who have every ability in the world to just fuck right off go in this one direction that I would like them to go in.
Right.
To hit these main plot points.
Yes.
That kind of goes back to something that we had talked about previously. As the DM, you know where you want the players to go, and maybe this is a peek behind the screen for some people listening, but the players don't know your endpoints. So if you want them to go to the east, to this region over here, and they decide, well, no, we're going to go west to the coast. Okay, well then you take them onto the coast, onto the ocean that happens to go to an island that just so happens to have that region that you were wanting them to go to in the east. You can shift things around so that they won't be any the wiser. They can still have their choice, and yet you can still craft the story in such a way that you're able to hit the points that you wanted them to hit.
Yeah, like if they're looking for a house in the forest, but they don't know that, and they start going to the beach, well, maybe they're not looking for a house in the forest. Maybe they're looking for a boat on the beach, and then they find this boat, and then they do everything in the boat that they were supposed to do in the house.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
Trickery.
Trickery indeed.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why DMs have a screen. Frankly, we supposed to lie. We are supposed to fucking lie.
Like the
We're
police.
supposed to fudge shit. I have never fudged dice to harm or screw a player, but I have fudged dice plenty
Yes.
to keep things interesting and to keep people having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I will never, ever, ever tweak a situation so that somebody dies or gets hurt when they didn't earn it through bad rolls of their own or bad luck or a dumb choice.
Bad role playing.
Point is, I've never fudged a die to hurt or punish a player. That's not fair and that's not nice, but I have gone the other way. I'll freely admit it, I have when everyone is having fun and one person isn't because it's just not their night, just having shitty rolls left and right or whatever. I will tweak something from time to time to let them have one, which is, it sounds bad, it sounds shitty, I know, and I'm sure that they wouldn't want to know that I did it. But the point is, I just want to make sure that everyone is enjoying themselves. And if someone very clearly is not, and they're just frustrated and, can't seem to hit anything, which God knows that's been me, because I have legendarily terrible rolls, I'll throw a softball from time to time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to make it not challenging. I'm never going to do anything like that. And I would never tweak it on something big or major or important. I just want to make sure everybody's having fun. That's always my absolute chief goal.
Right.
That should be I would say here it should be the main goal for every DM, but I know that that depends on DM to DM.
There are some DMs for whom the goal is to quote unquote win, by which I mean kill the entire party.
No.
Yeah, not my style.
It's not an us versus them. You act as the moderator.
Yeah, I mean, it's, at least for the way that I think that we like to play, from gauging how we've been chatting about it, we are very much more narrative focused rather than the crunch of the game and the numbers and everything. I mean, I like a little bit of crunch in my game, like just a little bit of it, but the vast majority of what I want to do is collaborative storytelling. That's way better to me.
I look at it, when you said that, from the perspective of, it should be exactly like fresh-made French bread. It should have just enough crunch to it, but it should also be soft inside to enjoy. But just enough crunch.
And when you're making it, you gotta make sure to cut it in like 3 or 4 spots. I don't know.
Oh, are you talking about scoring it?
Yes, I'm talking about scoring it. I don't know.
It's 5. It's 5. Traditionally, it's 5.
Well, there you go. 5 scores.
This is something I know.
Yes.
just like in D&D, we can go off into a tangent and just talk about baking for a while.
Certainly.
That will happen. I imagine goofs to happen in this thing.
As a player, I fucking love crunch, and I love combat, and I love rolling dice, and like that's what's fun as a player. As a DM, it's quite the opposite. I definitely really prefer the story elements of that and everything. But anyways, our original topic here, the original idea was, what came first, the players or the campaign? And the idea here around about how to work with certain groups of players or whatever when looking for people to play the game, or when helping players come up with characters to play. Are you the types, or do you ever like to guide them in terms of we need a healer, we need a this, we need a that?
I would say subtly, in my opinion. How do I put this? At first, yes. But if not really a big deal, because it is a fluid campaign, so you could obviously change it a little bit so it makes sense for no healing or no healer to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely don't try to make my players do anything as far as filling out a traditional party with traditional roles. If people have questions, if they want assistance, I will help them. In my experience, a lot of it goes to so have you ever played Fallout or Skyrim?
Excellent.
What kind of person do you make? Do you like to be up close and hit things? Do you want to be far away? Do you want people to be able to hit you and not die? Do you want to just not be able to be hit? And then go from there.
Yep.
Yeah.
As far as Fallout's concerned, or Skyrim, my entire character build, when I'm serious about it, is how many points can I put into charisma where I can just talk my way out of anything and never land a hit?
That's me in real life.
So, rogue. Definitely rogue. Got it.
Yeah, but not a very good one. My approach has always been for beginners, for beginners. I will tend to do that because it's extremely helpful to be able to separate things into those categories when it comes to just knowing how the game functions. You know what I mean? I think that it's very helpful as sort of a teaching tool. But once you've got a handle on it, or if they really, I mean, and I'll never make anybody play anything. I'll tell them what the more traditional party is and ask if anybody would like to fill those roles or whatever. But if they don't want to, that's fine. We can do a game with all healers, or we can do a game with 3 bards and like 1 paladin, like whatever the hell, it doesn't matter. I'll make it work.
Oops, all bards.
We can make anything work, really. There's a lot of different good ways to do it. You know, the 1 or 2 times when we just haven't really had a healer at all, it's just like make potions readily available. Problem solved.
In Brian's campaign, I'm kind of technically the healer.
I hadn't thought about that.
I usually end up technically being the healer, but in this instance, I'm like, I have a firm grasp on how to do cleric pretty well now. So, and I love your campaign so far, despite only playing in 1 session. It is
it's literally brand new, but I'm very excited about it. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a good game. I'm eager.
Yeah, the campaign that I'm running, it's the basic idea, and just giving kind of like the 1-sentence overview is something happened in the world, and there is basically a chance that there could be monsters anywhere. Just like the colloquial term for it is the swarm, and you could be just walking down the road and all of a sudden, you know, there's a demon in front of you and you have to deal with that. But there is a central city that has this ancient Magitech shield over it, and that city is called Swarmhaven. It's run by this church that's kind of like this government organization, and the basic premise of the world, essentially. I don't know if that made any sense, but
yes,
I gathered. I mean, how you're handling it so far, just from the interactions I've had with you for the campaign in general, and then just from our 1 session so far, I'd say you're doing a pretty good job. I liked everything that you're doing.
Yep, it's good. It's very good. I'm eager.
I'm just like realizing like I'm at such a disadvantage because y'all play together. So like everything you guys talk about is in relationship to one another, and then I'm just like, here.
Ah, shit. Sorry about that.
Yeah, in the future we need to be a lot more careful about not steamrolling over Chris with our shared D&D experiences.
Okay, so I think we hit my personal goal of trying to get enough content for a first episode, which honestly, the fact that's even a physical manifestation of it right now in front of me with all of us talking and recording at the same time, I'm still kind of in awe about that. But
You did it.
yeah, I guess we should probably wrap it up from here, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here in terms of topic to topic, what we can discuss. I'd say we can all give a good shenanigan that you were in or that you heard
Chris
of.
was saying it would be a good idea. Chris was saying it would be a good idea to end this shit on a, how did you phrase it?
D&D goofs.
Yes. Hell yeah. Stick with initiative order?
okay.
All right, Brian, you're up.
Okay, so probably my favorite D&D goof, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing this from you, Kyle, is the time when Kyle was running a campaign, and we were in this, I think it was like a jail or something, and there was a wizard there that we were fighting, and we defeated him. But we were thinking that he's a wizard, he's dangerous, we've got to make sure that he doesn't come after us. So we were thinking that he probably has some kind of magical items on him. So the idea was that we were going to take away all of his items. So we stripped him naked. And then we continued searching through the jail. We come back to the room that we had left him in, stupidly, and he's just gone. Because none of us had thought to tie up the wizard.
Fucking morons. I still can't believe you did that. That was the best day of my life as a DM, I'll tell you that much. I was just like, oh my fucking god, they didn't do it. They really didn't do it. They didn't tie him up. Well, guess who's a recurring villain now, motherfuckers? Yeah. That was so... Oh my god. Next up is Chris.
Oh man. So, do you guys want one that I've already told before, or one that happened recently?
Totally up to you.
Well, both of them.
The weirdest one you can think of.
The weirdest one I can think of, well, I mean, it's not weird so much as, like, interesting from a DMing standpoint. So, recently, my players were going to find these bandits who stole someone's ring, and they go out into the forest and they use their really awesome skills to figure out where this encampment is, and they scope it out, and there's two bandits there. And we all roll initiative, and we're like ready for them to attack these bandits, and then suddenly our bard is like, I'm gonna cast sleep. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And he cast sleep, and he put both the bandits to sleep. And they were like, yeah, so I'm gonna just tie these guys up and go through their stuff, and we're just gonna take all their stuff back to town with us. And that was it. Like, battle averted.
That's awesome.
Excellent sleep. Absolutely excellent.
Now, did they strip them naked?
They did not strip them naked. They did gag them. And so this town that they're taking them back to is on the other side of a river, so they have to go across this ferry who's like run by this one dude, and the one dude was just kind of like, what the fuck, guys?
Excellent.
Like, why are you bringing prisoners onto my boat?
All right.
Steve, I think you're next.
I believe so.
I had to go through my fucking memory files to figure out which one to get because there's so many.
Oh yeah.
There was one in Pathfinder or in 3.5 where I was an artificer and it was me and Joe.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
And there was an orc clan that we just passed by, and there's a little known skill in 3.5 called diplomacy, and we were about to get into combat and we were able to use diplomacy and not get into combat at all.
There was more than one nat 20 involved that day.
Yep, we both just did 20s. As we were about to enter combat, we rolled for diplomacy, and we didn't enter into combat. We just discussed orc and human relations, and we, got out of their way, and they respected our way, and we went our separate ways.
So you sweet talked the orc.
Yes!
He actually, if we want to be totally honest, he may have started peace talks. That could have cascaded into some really good shit. Because they did that fucking well on that diplomacy check. That could have had reverberations throughout the politics of that world. It was nuts how good that went.
It was so bonkers, too, that I'm like, okay, I have a weirdly high diplomacy skill. Let's fucking go for it. And Joe, who was our paladin, he didn't have a god. He just believed in the concept of justice. It was so wild. He was also with me on this. We just rolled for diplomacy, and we just didn't get to enter combat. We just peacefully disengaged the entire thing.
Excellent. I am going to end with the story of Win Thomas and the time that scythe shouldn't have been a boomerang, but it was a boomerang, and it was bad for everyone involved.
I wasn't even in that campaign, and oh god.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, I was playing a character named Win Thomas. At this point, I have forgotten everything about him except for his name, his voice, and the fact that he was fucking Professor Lockhart from Harry Potter. Is that right, Lockhart? Yeah, of course it is. What the hell am I thinking?
Yeah. Gilderoy Lockhart.
So anyway, I was playing a character called Win Thomas who was basically just a total blowhard, was the whole thing, right? And so I wanted to constantly declare fucking absurd things and then try to do them and just see if I could pull it off. You know what I mean? So I was using a scythe as a weapon, and we were in a room full of bad guys and hostages, right? And I was thinking to myself, okay, I am gonna arc this scythe like a boomerang and try to hit as many of these fuckers as I can in one big dumb swing. And I know it's not going to work. Of course it's not going to work, but it's going to be funny as hell. And that's what I'm really after here right now, is for this to be fun and funny. So I go to do it. The DM says, that's utterly stupid. You can't do that. And I was like, let me try. I just want to try. Let me give this a shot, okay? And so he was like, all right, fine. 3 nat 20s right now, and we'll make this work. And I rolled a nat 20, and then I rolled another nat 20, and then I rolled a nat 1. So what happened? The DM decided that what happened was the arcing the scythe through the air like a boomerang was completely successful. Unfortunately, the targeting was not, and I killed all the hostages.
Oh god.
Technically, you did end the situation.
I did end the situation. Yeah, the next week I had to, tell the guys that hired us to save them. God. That was a good day. That was a wild one. See, I love that shit. I love letting utterly absurd things happen if you get enough nat 20s, and when you get that nat 1, It's like, oh, you almost did it, but then it went catastrophically wrong.
The dice tell the story.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us in our inaugural episode of Rolling Into Your DMs.
Woo!
I don't have a conclusion sentence. Oh, plug our socials.
Yeah, I'm trying to sell stuff.
Sure. I am at Standish Gladwin on Twitter, and that's all you need to know.
I'm at Pistols O'Brien on basically everything. Twitter, Instagram. Look for Pistols O'Brien and you'll find me.
I am at Robots for Cake on everything. That's ROBOTSFORCAKE. And you can also find me on Ko-fi, and you can give me money at kofi.com/robotsforcake. And sometimes I will do things in exchange for that money.
You could find me on Twitter at Acrylic Pixel. That's ACRYLICPXL. I guess that'll conclude it for now, and maybe we'll see you in the next episode if the world didn't go already to shit.
Woo!
Just keep a lookout, and maybe we'll roll into your DMs next time.
Oh, that's good. That works. It's good. I was looking for an ending line. Okay, bye everybody. The thing that Brian said is the end, not my nonsense.
Thank you for sitting in on this session. You've gained 200 experience points. Rolling Into Your DMs was produced by Steve and Brian, written by Kyle and Chris, and created by Steve, Brian, Kyle, and Chris, with the help of a handful of dice. You can find us on Twitter at Rolling Into Your DMs. That's rolling in the number 2 URDMs. Or on Instagram at Rolling Into Your DMs. Join us next time, and don't forget your character sheet.